welcome to this special panel event, which we're going to be hosting today as a part of 16 Days, 16 Films. I'm Sarah DeAngelis. I'm the Partnerships Manager for UK Says No More, which is the National Awareness and Prevention campaign for domestic abuse and sexual violence. We are a part of the global No More family and hosted by crisis response charity Hestia. We work closely with our partners to challenge and hopefully change the societal narrative that exists around domestic abuse and sexual violence. And in 2018, we co-created 16 Days, 16 Films with our partner Modern Films. And 16 Days, 16 Films is a short film competition which amplifies female filmmakers' voices and aims to increase visibility of violence against women and girls during 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, which we're currently in at this moment in time. We are in our fourth year now, and it's kind of grown from strength to strength. Over the past 4 years, we've had some fantastic thought-provoking submissions from the UK, from Ireland, from Italy, from France, from Mexico and the US, and hosted some incredible program of events which has kind of engaged not only just kind of female filmmakers, but also change makers too, and activists. And today's panel is a part of this year's kind of program of events. And we're going to be discussing how film can play that kind of powerful role in creating that kind of social change. And I am joined today by an amazing panel of women and men, of course. So before we kind of begin, I thought it'd be good to kind of go around the screen and let yourselves kind of introduce yourselves with your name and a kind of a sentence about what it is that you do. I suppose I'll go to the first person that I can see here, kind of Lorien. Maybe if you want to go first and kind of introduce yourself.
Sure. Jude and I just did this. I need a microphone. I need the stick to talk into. I'm Lorien Haynes. I'm a survivor activist. I'm a writer, producer, filmmaker, actor. And I've been working in the survivor space since 2013, when I wrote a documentary about child abuse within Hollywood for a documentary director called Amy Berg. And I've continued to work and write in this area since 2013.
Thank you, Lorien. And we've got Valent and Nandor. Did you want to introduce yourselves?
Hello, I am Nandor Lorien and he's Valent. We are a director, DOP duo, and we make films, and of course about this topic also.
Yeah, our first feature film talks about this sensitive subject from a really unique perspective. Later on, we will talk about this. It's called As Far As I Know, and it's been presented at Raindance Film Festival like a week ago or something like that.
Yeah.
So already the British audience could watch the movie in your cinemas. So basically that's it.
I'm going to probably ask you guys a little bit later to go into detail a little bit about that film. We'll come into that into probably one of the questions. Pamela, thank you for joining. I know you've just jumped on from one call to the other. You've had a busy day like Jude and Lorien, I think, by the sounds of things. I'll come to you last, Pamela. We're just doing kind of introductions, so you can just kind of catch breath for a moment. Ita, I'll come to you next.
Hello, it's an absolute pleasure to be here. So I'm Ita O'Brien. I'm a actor, dancer, movement teacher, movement director, and then more recently author of the Intimacy on Set Guidelines and creator of the company Intimacy on Set, that provides intimacy coordination for the industry and trains up intimacy coordinators. And I also was very close friends with a lady called Sian Blake, and this subject matter in particular is very close to my heart, as she lost her life to domestic violence in December 2015. And so this is a really important subject matter. So it's her and her children. So yes, I really want to dedicate my presence here to Sian Blake.
Thank you so much, Ita. Thank you for joining us today and for that dedication. Jude, over to you. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah. So I'm Jude Kelly. I'm a theatre director and producer and commissioner of work of all different kinds. I started the WOW Women of the World festivals in 2010. And they look at how do we celebrate all the conversations that need to be had in order to create a gender equal world. And they happen in 17 countries now in lots of different kind of contexts. I've just finished the last festival that we did this weekend, was called Shameless, and it was a festival of sexual harm and medical encounter, which doesn't sound as if it would be very joyful, but actually it was really fantastically exciting. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Jude. And I'm probably going to pick your brains and ask you questions to give us a little bit more detail about the WOW kind of impact that you're having across the world with those events a bit later on. Pamela, thank you for joining. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Pamela Zamballa. I am the Global Executive Director of No More. No More is a global organization working to prevent domestic and sexual violence. And the way that we are kind of constituted is we have the global foundation, and then we have, chapters in countries and cities all over. And so we have around 40 chapters globally, 1,700 allied organizations to the network. And for us, again, and we'll talk, I think, on this as we go, right? Our focus is trying to use all the resources, branding, materials, creation of all of that to prevent domestic and sexual violence, and support organizations throughout the world that may not have the resources to create all of that by themselves. So thank you very much for having me here, and sorry for, it's just, one of those very busy seasons, jumping from several events, actually.
No,
so thank you very much.
Thank you, Pamela. And Jude, I know that you've got to unfortunately leave us for, is it 7:45?
6:45.
6:45, sorry, not 7:45. No, sorry, I'm an hour ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. So just to kind of let the audience know if Jude does kind of just disappear from the screen.
Yes, it wasn't anything anybody said. Yeah. Yeah,
not what anybody said at all. But thank you everyone for and welcome, for today's event. Before we get started, I suppose just a little bit of housekeeping. There was an announcement, I don't know if everyone heard, but this event is being recorded. And it will be available on 16 Day 16 Films and UK Says No More websites afterwards. So please do share far and wide with your networks if you wish. Anyone who has joined today and is in the audience, if you do have a question, please do submit it via the Q&A box, which I think is just below. It should hopefully just be there. We'll be kind of collating them kind of like throughout the event, and if we do have time at the end, we will try and get those answered. And of course, lastly, the topic of discussion today is around violence against women and girls, and this may be triggering. So if you are triggered and want to access support, at the end, kind of we'll be popping into the kind of chat support information for women and for men too. So let's get started. As you can imagine, with a panel like this, we definitely weren't short of questions to think of, and I'm going to jump right in. And my first question is for Balint and Nandor. Now I've watched your film, as far as I know. I have actually watched the film. That's the title of the film, as far as I know. And I found it, I suppose, just really interesting how you chose to centralize the male response to female trauma, and you also highlighted how re-traumatizing actually how the justice systems can be, which of course is an extremely recognizable situation for a lot of women. So I'm just wondering, as two men, what compelled you to tell this story, through this lens, and can you tell us a little bit about the film?
Yeah, of course. As you said, the title is As Far As I Know. And at first, this is a feature of a husband losing faith in his marriage after an assault. And Dinesh and Nora have been trying to adopt a child for some years. And the film starts with the news that they're about to receive a baby in a matter of weeks. And after a celebration with their friends, they have an argument and separate on their way home. And the next day, Nora tells Dana she has been raped by a stranger last night. Yeah.
And then Nora's description is used to find the alleged perpetrator. The perpetrator and Nora's testimony start to stand against each other. They equally credible and totally opposing. So it's the main conflict of the movie, as our protagonist, the husband, starts to lose all his faith in his wife.
Yeah, and your first question was, what was our motivation, or what was the force?
Yeah.
Actually, we have been working on this concept of this feature, I think, for 6 years now, or 7. And the topic is a personal one. Many years ago, a female friend of us was assaulted sexually, and she was the only witness. And I was struck most not by the assault itself, but by the reaction she received from the police and the people close to her. You know, everybody had those stupid questions. What did she do to provoke this situation? Or what did she wear? The same questions, the same stupid questions. And that was tough. And I think, I think it is hard to admit, but we should face it. This man's society, or our man's society, is full of prejudice and mistrust.
And after this discovery, we realized that we wanted to make a film about this sensitive subject, but from the husband's point of view.
Yeah.
Because several important films, were told from the victim's perspective, but we really rarely encounter the viewpoint of the skeptical and mistrustful environment among these characters. So this is what really interests us, the process of losing faith in each other in the face of external pressure, for example. So that's what we are examining in our film. That happens to our main character.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I think all of us here, probably in the audience and especially on the panel, they're quite familiar things that we hear day to day from survivors, is that this is the kind of response which they are receiving from loved ones, from the system, and from people in positions of power and trust. And hopefully we'll explore a little bit of that as we go on in these conversations today. But film is definitely, as you know, kind of like a powerful tool that has the ability, I think, to reach multiple audiences and hopefully change the way that people think and alter the way that people respond to those disclosures of sexual violence. And last year, during the global pandemic, many charities and organisations, including UK Says No More and, of course, the No More chapters, turned to film to kind of like reach victims of domestic abuse and sexual violence, but especially kind of like narrative around domestic abuse, where they were stuck at home with perpetrators, and that we kind of utilise film as a tool to kind of let them know that they're not alone and that support is available. Pamela, I'm going to turn to you on this one. You've had a lot of experience working on international and, of course, national PSAs, public service announcements. Why do you think that they have such an impact?
I think, as I was talking before, I think for No More, it was very important for the founders of No More. It was very important to be able to kind of engage people into the message of prevention. And I think one of the things that they were seeing was that domestic violence and sexual assault were kind of being kept separate and like two spectrums. So the idea of bringing that together and engage was really important. But I think something else they were seeing is that all of the material that was engaging, the marketing, the videos, where seemed to be only a couple of organizations could actually produce that type of material, right? And many of the small organizations just did not have the ability of producing this type of campaigns. And so I'm saying that because I think that idea of trying to get to more people through PSAs, which in a way were prohibited for many of the sector, was one of the ways that they knew that they could engage people. And so a PSA is a short way of telling a story, of leaving a message in that moment, and you can kind of just grasp the idea of that. In the first in the first era of No More, there were a lot of celebrity endorsed PSAs, and that caught the attention. No More came out at the same time that YouTube also was starting to become, this kind of streaming way of looking at things. And I think those PSAs had a lot of engagement. But then we had the opportunity of placing the first social ad in a Super Bowl. And as you can imagine, that created a lot of awareness, right? We were, all of a sudden in 100 million homes there. And if you see that PSA, it's still very powerful. It's still in Time Magazine's, I think it's number 9 on the most influential Super Bowl ads of all times. It's called Listen. And you're pretty much just listening. There's not a lot going on, but people remember the sensation. You learn about what is not said, and you learn about what's being said. So I recommend everybody to have that. It's just 30 seconds, and it kind of really worked really well. After Listen, the No More Foundation decided that every year they were going to have PSAs created. And the one that you were talking about, and Sarah, last year, Listening from Home during the pandemic was very successful. Really telling people what was an insight on people's homes. And then there was a second kind of PSA that came after, just trying to tell people also what they could do, right? If they were hearing things in the neighbor's house. And this year we launched another PSA that was animated and that used fables. The idea was to create a fable in 30 seconds that left you with one message. And that message was that, we need everybody to chip in to try to end domestic and sexual violence. So just to sum up, PSAs, really important way, 30 seconds, you can leave somebody with one message. And I think that's really powerful.
Definitely. And I think that with PSAs, we've used quite a lot of the PSAs in training and engaging with a lot of the partners which we work with UK Says No More, and it's been really impactful, and it's delivered quite quite a sharp message at a time when it's quite needed. Now, the global pandemic brought us many lockdowns, and one of the things that a lot of people turned to during those lockdowns was TV and films. I'm completely guilty. That was me completely throughout the whole of those lockdowns, not even a lockdown, to my day-to-day life. But some of these series and films have created kind of like national and in some cases international kind of like conversations around sexual violence. And most recently, we saw that with Sex Education and their sexual assault busing storyline, which was delivered, and also through I May Destroy You, which of course explored our horrifying reality of rape culture, not just in the UK, but of course, across the world. And Ita, you were the intimacy coordinator for both of these. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on those sets? What your role is as kind of like intimacy coordinator, kind of introduce that role, and kind of why is it important to have an intimacy coordinator on set, not just for the sexual violence scenes and for scenes of trauma, but also kind of any scenes that includes any form of kind of intimacy. I think you're on mute, sorry, Ita.
Yeah, thank you. An intimacy coordinator basically just brings a professional process to the intimate content, just bringing up the bog standard actor director professional approach to dealing with the scenes of intimacy. And then it brings in the idea that actually an intimate scene is a body dance, just like a tango, would be, is like a dance between two people, just like a stunt or a fight is a something that's a dance between two people that needs to be choreographed, and it brings in skills in order to teach people how to do that safely. So that's what we're bringing in, the intimacy on-set guidelines, and then the role of the intimacy coordinator is just establishing that in the industry. And it's completely mad that it wasn't there beforehand, because before the role of the intimacy coordinator and clear guidelines to work to, it was just left, it was, what's asked here, step in front of the camera and just go for it. And in that place, without been able to have proper open conversations, professional conversations about what do you want, what do you want as a director, how are we going to serve that, then what's the camera angles, having those conversations with the DOP, perhaps doing storyboards, then checking out with the actor, okay, this is what the director wants, what's okay for you, really inviting the actor's requirements. So, okay, saying this is what's wanted, now what is okay for you, what is within your agreement and consent regarding simulated sexual content, nudity and touch. And then us relaying all that and then working really clearly with everywhere that is within the actor's agreement and consent, bringing in the actor direct process, really serving storytelling, and then getting up on our feet and then choreographing really clearly, serving every single beat of the writing, every single beat that the director wants of the physical storytelling, clear choreography that allows the actor to be personally safe, so they can be artistically vulnerable, artistically serving these character storytellings, artistically serving both of the roles. And if it is a violent role, violent or challenging scene, really allowing each actor to play the role of the perpetrator and the role of the victim in a really present and conscious way, with clear choreography that allows them to be anchored and safe within the physical shapes that they can really release into the intimate storytelling. And what we bring, and particularly why it's so important for violent scenes, is that so first of all, for me, what's most important about the intimacy guidelines is bringing through clear choreography and detail that we're able to just tell a better physical storytelling that is true, that isn't glamorizing, the physical act. And through being able to walk through step by step, we're able to bring an honesty and a truth to it that that I feel is very important. For this storytelling, so that it's that there's an honesty and a truth to it that really allows these stories to honour all the people who have experienced this, in their actual lives, and then hopefully that storytelling can have an impact on an audience, and either healing or inviting a discussion around it, so that where that sense of our art is reflecting our humanity back to itself, so that we tell storytellings in a really good way, so that we shine a light on people who have experienced this in real life, and hopefully some healing should come from it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I completely agree. Is that I think that what my hope, I suppose, is that, with especially post kind of Me Too and Time's Up, is that we've seen I've seen from an outside sector perspective anyway, a lot more talk around intimacy coordinators, kind of being on set and also on stage. I think from my hope, and I suppose for many other people, is that it becomes almost like a standard practice for film theatre, to have like an intimacy coordinator on set and on stage, and of course a safe stage. Sorry, Ita.
I've actually just come from a conversation with the BBC. So Charlotte Moore, declared a couple of weeks back that they, with their anti-harassment and bullying protocols that they're putting in place, that they're now pledging that all productions, that have intimate content will work with an intimacy coordinator. And I've just met with 3 fabulous women in order to now put that in place and start going in and talking to the commissioning editors and the producers. So yes, that's really exciting. And and just reiterating, Michaela Cole's dedication, it's really fantastic to be able to, she said, to make programs about abuse without the actors being abused in the process, and saving the actor from, as she said, she puts it so clearly, the internal devastation of the actor when work has been done that's not been journeyed through with agreement and consent, that's not been journeyed through in a professional way, that really does lead a performer damaged. The injury, of course, is the emotional, psychological injury, that internal devastation, and that's what doesn't, no more, we don't need to ever have a situation where that has happened.
Exactly that, no more. And I think, Michaela is incredible. Huge fan, and she has really, not just through her work but also herself have kind of ignited a lot of international conversations for change around film and how we're kind of responding to that. And congratulations with the BBC as well. That is an incredible achievement, and just goes to show the power of change that can happen when people work together and we have those partnership-based kind of solutions. So that's incredible work, well done. But I do, we hopefully there'll be an intimacy coordinator on set and on stage in every production that has any kind of scenes of intimacy. And talking about theatre, it is the kind of the oldest and the most powerful art form which there is, which is told, stories on stage for thousands of years. And Lorien, you have created film as well as theatre to deliver kind of like powerful messages and convey, the kind of the challenges which women kind of like face in, our lifetime. Can you tell us a little bit about your film, Everything I Wanted to Tell My Daughter About Men, and your play Punched, which is in theatre? You've got a special event lined up next week for that,
which Jude is directing, can I just say?
Yes, she is.
The film, yes. Well, the film is literally what it says. It's everything I ever wanted to tell my daughter about men. And I sat down and wrote a play saying precisely that. But what it is at heart is it's a woman's journey to reconcile her child abuse, and to understand that all the subsequent choices she makes in men and in relationships have been a consequence of being abused as a young child. And this was written from personal experience. And I offer that up, and I wanted to offer that up in the film, really, because it's something that I didn't understand until I actually started working on it. I didn't understand until I really started looking at myself and the choices that I made in my life. And that the situations that I got myself into in a lot of my relationships, it was a result of being abused as a small child, and that was a very long journey for me. And the film is a way of telling that story, really. And I was incredibly lucky because I had 21 female directors on board to help me tell that story. So every relationship that's depicted in the film is a short film in its own right. And each short film was directed by a different female director. And then all those films were sewn together to make one collective narrative, which is this woman's journey through therapy. So it's a sort of roadmap for survivors in a way, to reconcile and actually understand what happened to her. Because like a lot of survivors, I experienced blackouts. And it was using working with EMDR and working with cognitive behavioral therapy that I actually started to be able to see through the blackouts and in a safe place try to work through what happened. So that's a fictionalized version of that story and that journey. And then Punched is slightly different in that we are translating survivors' stories into dramatic monologues, a bit like the vagina monologues. It's an homage to that, really, because we were trying to find a way of talking about all forms of sexual violence that was accessible, digestible, in a sense that they're moments of experience. And I think in some ways, it's very hard for people to receive this subject matter. It's very hard to attract people to come and watch it. But the problem is, unless people watch it and unless you try and convey it in such a way that it can be communicated, unless you find a way of telling survivor stories that people can listen to, people won't listen. They shut down. So I think one of the things I've been trying to learn working in this area is, how do you tell these stories in a way that people can hear them? And how do you tell these stories in a way that other women and other people are encouraged to come forward and share? Because my takeaway from all of this is that it's often very difficult to know what you can do about this situation, but what women can do and children can do and is have safe places in which to break their silence. And I think that is what helps sexual violence not to be normalized. And if people can actually speak and be heard and held in that conversation, that's the first step towards saying, this is not normal. This should not be happening. You can speak safely and in a safe place. So Punched really is, it's in support of the UN 16 Days to End Gender-Based Violence. And it is an examination of sexual violence from domestic violence to rape, to sexual harassment, to coercive control, to child abuse, and a way of our trying to shine a light into the darkest place, using some humor and using some dramatization to make it more accessible, really.
Thank you. And I think that it's much needed. These kind of like productions, these theatre shows that, you know, the kind of performances that once it captures, you know, will capture that audience and hopefully give them insight as to either something to completely relate to, or give them hopefully that kind of call for action once they come out of that theatre. I think it's a really powerful message actually that you've just conveyed there, is that I think that now more than ever we need more safe spaces for women to kind of be able to share our stories and our thoughts and our kind of our needs. And I think, you know, if we look back at the last 18 months, it's been really tough. You know, we've had a domestic abuse bill which has passed, but it's not been inclusive of all victims of domestic abuse. And we've seen rape prosecutions and convictions in England and Wales drop to, you know, complete all-time low. We've had, you know, a global pandemic which told everyone to stay at home and stay safe, but for many women, you know, home is not a safe place. And we've had stats which have been released by UN Women UK, which kind of showed that I think it was 98% of women, young women, have experienced sexual harassment, you know, on the streets. So, you know, we're not safe at home, we're not safe on the streets, and, you know, we need a lot of kind of action to stop this. And as Lorien has said, is that we need more of those safe spaces. And Jude, I'm going to turn to you here, because you provide those safe spaces, a lot of safe spaces for women through WOW, Women of the World, and you host, you know, you've been hosting kind of global events now for quite some time where you discuss, you know, and address kind of a lot of those issues. I know that you kind of, in your introduction, you kind of touched a little bit about WOW Festival, but can you kind of, I know that you created it, kind of give us a little bit of insight as to kind of what inspired you to start it, and what do you feel, I suppose, from the events that you've hosted over the last 18 months is kind of being echoed in the room by women as the kind of, this is the change that we want to see, this is one of the needs? Well,
I'm a theatre director by background, and, you know, that's been my life for years and years and years. And yet, you know, even though I have been in very sort of powerful places in terms of choices I could make and organisations that I ran, you're really dealing with single narratives in plays, the majority of which throughout the whole of history have been framed from the point of view of this is what men do and this is how women fit in with what men do. And that really hasn't changed very much. I mean, there's a slew of new feminist material, and every so often throughout history, indeed, there has been. You know, it's not absolutely new, this thing. But, you know, it is made invisible again very quickly because, you know, it can't struggle against the dominant narrative over and over again, which is that men do and women assist. And if women assist badly or not in a troubling manner, or they resist assisting, then they are punished for it. And they're either punished by making them invisible or silencing them or damaging them or whatever. So the WOW Festival really exists in order to give women and men the confidence, the boldness, the joy, the happiness of feeling, actually, you know, women and girls have done thousands of things for thousands of years amazingly well. a common narrative, of course, is that those things have all been done inside the context of patriarchy, and that has molded us, both men and women, into shapes and styles of action and habits and complicities, etc., which result in constantly delivering under delivering the potential of girls and women to contribute to the world in the ways that they obviously can, and then over accelerating a kind of sense of boys and men's entitlement, which is very harmful to them. So, the WOW festivals all over the world look at everything from being an astronaut to the politics of how your hair looks. But, embedded inside of these festivals, inevitably, we always talk about rape. We always talk about sexual violence. We always talk about self-harm and damage, because there isn't one place in the entire world where that internalized misogyny or externalized misogyny doesn't have a hold, because it does. But the thing is that audiences all over the world want to come and learn more about how, intersectional power is a kind of particular set of poisons, and people all over the world also want to go, there must be something better than this. Shall we try and create it? And, there is going to be something better than this, and we are trying to create it. But you can't create anything different unless you have the honesty to talk about what you've currently got. And the silencing aspect around violence is, it's another kind of poison. And so, part of the thing I'm always trying to say in WOW is there's nothing to be feared in naming stuff. Not naming it is to be feared.
Yeah.
But obviously you can't do that on your own. You need the safety of feeling that, that's going to be okay. And there's a space being held for you to speak. And of course, any lived experience is expert experience. So the other thing that WOW tries to do is not say, look, there'll be some other people talking about some people, but those other people aren't here. But to say, actually, this is about what we have all experienced. And, Lorien's just said, she's a director. She's also a survivor. There's lots of things about all of us that where we co-join, regardless of what one level of status might be giving us, another level of in our lives is something else. And I think that we girls and women have got to be much more loving and open to each other about sharing the complicated mess that we all inevitably wade through, because we're operating inside a system that we haven't created and which we are fairly powerless over a lot of the time.
Definitely. I'm sorry if you can hear my dog barking. She's going a bit.
She's agreeing. I can hear her agreeing.
She's agreeing with you, Jude.
Absolutely.
She is agreeing with you. I'm just aware, Jude, we've only got you for a few minutes, so I just want to kind of ask you to talk a little bit about the Shameless Festival, which it was last Saturday, I think it was.
Yes, it was Saturday, and it was I really believe in festivals. This is the thing. I believe in multiple narratives happening at the same time that allow people to kind of pick and mix and learn stuff, say stuff, share stuff, etc. Which is, I suppose, why, although obviously I love theatre, but film, theatre, etc., you have an auteur, and the camera tells you where to look, or the lights tell you where to look, and so you're directed in your travel of narrative. And I was really interested in this kind of idea that the multiple narratives allow the participant to shape the narrative through bits and pieces, to self-collage, if you like. And that's a whole other story, but that's what I'm excited and interested in. But the Shameless Festival came about because there's a project at Birkbeck University called SHAME, Sexual Harm and Medical Encounter, basically demonstrating through research over many, many years that sexual harm is actually made even more harmful by an awful lot of the encounters that survivors have, not just with medicine, but with experts. And so we took the research as WOW and kind of go, we'll make this kind of a public engagement program around all of this stuff. So there was about 35 different panels on different subjects, everything from rape as a weapon of war with Christina Lamb, the journalist, through to, what is the internalized situation in family dynamics that allows child abuse to be sustained. And hundreds of people came, completely sold out, could have been sold out several times over. And, the aim was to have not only a safe space for survivors to learn more and to share more, but also people who may not even realize that they are, or may be perpetrators, because that's likely to be the case in certain circumstances, or just people holding on to false narratives that need to be unlocked in order for survivors to be heard differently. Anyway, it was great. I mean, we loved it. We're doing it in Brazil next year, but we're also looking at to do it again in the UK.
Oh, well, I hope that you do. I missed it this year and I was absolutely gutted. So hopefully I won't have to get on a flight to Brazil to attend the next one.
No, I'm sure we'll be doing it again. And I mean, this 16 days allows us, doesn't it, to kind of help each other and share with each other. And I was very appreciative of what Blan and Nador talked about, because, this is not about women and girls. It's predominantly women and girls, but actually, we had male survivors there. And also, we haven't found a way yet of discussing what perpetrator means and how to carry male behavior into a new kind of idea of what masculinity should look like that is good and healthy. We haven't done that. And that's a conversation which, women can never have on their own. It has to be a shared conversation, and we're badly needing that shared conversation.
Definitely. And I think there's that whole conversation piece around redefining what gender roles actually look like as well.
Yeah. So thank you, and thanks. I'm sorry I have to leave everybody, but
no, of course. Thank you so much for joining. And also, just kind of end on the note, Jude, if you kind of weren't aware that the WOW kind of events that you've got planned in March actually coincide with No More Week. So every year we have International No More Week, and actually coincides next year with No More Week. So we'll definitely be in touch with you about that.
Okay, fantastic. Thanks. Bye.
Okay. Thanks so much, Jude.
Bye.
Now, Pamela, similar to Jude, you've worked tirelessly to ensure that a survivor's voice, of course, is in the room. And you've worked with many businesses to kind of help them kind of play their role in ending domestic abuse and sexual violence. What, I suppose, my question for you would be kind of what can businesses in the film industry do to support their employees who have experienced any form of sexual violence on or off set? Pamela, you're on mute. You're still on mute. Sorry.
I can't believe that in this day and age we still do that. Following Jude's kind of honesty spirit, I think the first thing that the industry needs to do, and we all need to do it, is to recognize that it has a problem with this issue because of power dynamics, because of all of the things that are played within the industry. Just, have a stop really and understand why and what is causing that. I think that honesty is needed, and that creates then, hopefully afterwards, the ability of creating measures like the one that Ita's kind of represent and is talking and is moving along, right? What measures are we going to create to not have those and I talk about measures and not always about policies, because policies are important because they can guide us. But I think it's this idea really that it's not only paper that we're talking about, is, what are we going to do to be really active in safeguarding people, in making sure that they can tell us and that they will be believed. I think that's very important. And also, I mean, many other industries like sports have also thought about sanctions when these things have not taken place or when, bad things are happening. So I think that's another angle.
Yeah.
I also think that educating on why those measures are important. So, there's a big debate right now around cancel culture all over. And there is a lot about, some people, I can't believe he did this, right? He never did it to me. He never did it to all the staff. So how how are these two women alleging, for example, that he did that. We're getting a lot of that recently, and it's important to educate people. If you're going to establish measures and you're going to be honest about the system, how does this work? So I think those would be my first kind of things really in terms of the industry itself.
Definitely. And I think that, I'd quite like to kind of open this up to the rest of the panelists. And I think Nandora and Balint, we've heard a little bit about kind of what the film industry can do, but as men who are working within the film industry, what do you think that you can do, I suppose, to be kind of what's your role, I suppose, in all of this, and how can you be allies for women who you are working with? And I suppose, how do we create more allies within the film industry?
Yeah, that's an important question. Of course, attention and communication, and actually, it is precisely the lack of these that we have explored in our film, and what can happen when someone suffers from a lack of them. And I think in complex life situations, it is sometimes easier to let ourselves be swept by the circumstances and our environment's expectations than to trust and believe in each other. As simple. And this is a tough subject, but one that runs deep in our men's society.
Yeah, and especially if we talk about cases like that, what we are talking about in our movie, we are focused on that subject. We need very little to doubt someone, and these doubts exist in all of us. And I guess to gain, more sympathy from men towards women, we can talk about this. We have like movies, for example, and in our movie, we were really interested in the person who should support or trust the victim. But for some reason, he's unable to do so. And our protagonist thinks himself as a liberal and broad-minded until he's confronted with his own hidden limits, as we are all sometimes. Of course, in the industry, it's happened to us. We are working together and we misjudge each other in a situation like this. And so we wanted to shine a different light on this subject by using a different angle, because several important works have been told from the victim's perspective. But we wanted to raise the man audience's attention to confront with the responsibility even more, because we have a huge responsibility in our everyday life, how we communicate and how we treat each other and how we treat a situation like this.
Yeah, and our mission and the how. I don't know. I think that many people can really be taught and developed in areas where they are not expected to be. And a lot of people who will not read more deeply about this subject or listen to a discussion like this about it on their own should change their preconceptions about women and victims. It is therefore better to wrap this teaching in something else, such an exciting film. For example, I think.
Definitely. And I think that in order to increase the empathy and understanding of violence against women and girls and women's experiences, and to create more male allies, I think we need more education, and we need to reach more men and make them aware of what it means to be an ally and what it means to take a stand. And of course, Pamela, you've done a huge piece of work around bystander intervention, and of course what it means to be a male ally with UK Says No More, and also with the wider No More chapters as well. And I think also just kind of important to note is that I suppose if we do have any audience members kind of who are kind of in today, who maybe want to learn a little bit more and become a better ally, then do visit, kind of the No More websites and the UK Says No More websites, where you can access, lots of different, kind of free learning and different resources which are kind of available to start some of those conversations in your places of work or within your friendship circles, really. Ita and Lorien, I'm keen to kind of come to you both. We've discussed a lot about the kind of the culture, I suppose, that exists within, like the kind of film industry around kind of sexual violence and kind of that conversation of kind of how that has shifted. And I suppose kind of brings me to kind of post kind of like Me Too and kind of Time's Up. Have you noticed much change, kind of within the film industry and how they're responding to sexual violence, or have you identified anything that's needed to continuously kind of like as it is a need to be improved?
Sorry.
Go on, Lorien.
I think there are two different issues here. I was thinking about it when I got the questions. I think there has been huge leaps and bounds in how, and Ita can talk about this, how people are treated on set, how actresses feel about boundaries and about auditions and about powerful men within the industry. I think that's one issue. I think the second issue is I'm not sure that that's been matched by content and the production of what we actually see, particularly on television, I have to say, because, in lockdown, the amount of material I've seen that contains horrific violence against women, crime, fictional crime series and documentary series, and it's very, it's really hard to avoid. So I think there are two different strands here, and I'll speak to the one, and Ita can speak to the other. But I would say it's very important that men are making the kind of film that these men are making here, and that it's about gatekeeping, and it's about allowing voices to be heard, and it's about commissioning editors for drama with the BBC and with ITV, and for the people that are commissioning writers and directors to really, really try and change their perspective about the material that makes it onto our televisions on a daily basis, and that films are encouraged to explore. I mean, I saw The Last Duel the other day, the Ridley Scott film, which I think is essentially about consent. And it felt to me very much that it was about consent from a male point of view. And I'm not quite sure how I felt about it. And it's a longer discussion, but that's a major blockbuster talking about three different viewpoints about what it meant for a woman to be raped. So we need more material like that to kind of kick up the conversation.
Yes, and I'd like to, so there, again, there's a couple of things. So first of all, while we keep women the victim within the narrative within our industry, we're actually keeping that status quo unconsciously without realizing it. So for example, on a production, I was asked by the producer, "You're here for the girl, right?" And in that statement of "you're here for the girl," you're already keeping the woman, the problem or the issue or the victim. And I'm going, you would never say to a stunt coordinator, "You're here for the goodie." Talk to the goodie, choreograph for the goodie, and leave the baddie alone. That's ridiculous. Of course, you're going to be there to create a narrative, to create a dynamic in relationship, choreographing it so that you're telling a story that involves everybody. And it's really important that we just go, we're here to bring parity, to bring respect across the board for everybody. And it means my role in that production, I was managed, and I was not allowed to, so this that idea of I was just there for the girl, permeated through the whole production, and I meant I couldn't do my job, and then conversely, actually, when I am able to ask, the actors, what is okay for you? It is as much our men who are having the opportunity to say, actually, no, I'm not comfortable to change a choreography at the last minute. I really need that security of doing the choreography that we rehearsed. I had a situation where, when the actor said, I'm not comfortable in changing, I went to the director and said, actually, no, the actress is fine, but the actor does not want to change the choreography. And the response was, call himself an actor. Now, the thing is, when there's that fundamental attitude, again, like I said, it goes across the board. What we need, and that's also in the industry, what we need is we stop calling them women's stories and then a story. Because a story is fundamentally a men's story. And again, we need to bring parity. We need to lift the lid. We need to invite more, just more content, and stop labeling it women's stories, so that, you know, so that it becomes just human stories. And we tell stories from a woman's point of view. For example, on I May Destroy You, the period sex scene was so groundbreaking, but why should it be? Half the population menstruate for about 40 years of their lives. Why is it that that's not seen? Again, that, you know, so life from a woman's perspective needs to become ordinary, but there needs, as Lorien was saying, that has to come from the work that's commissioned, the writing that's commissioned, the writing that's given the green lights. So again, we just bring parity for human stories.
Definitely, and thank you so much. And I think that the language in which we use, you know, it's all part of that bigger kind of like cultural change that is so needed. And I think I'm just aware of time. We're just coming to nearly 7 o'clock already. We could have a whole more hour, and if not more, of kind of discussing this, and it needs maybe its own kind of separate kind of panel just to have that discussion. But thank you all so much for bringing that insight into the film industry, and, you know, and also Pamela from your sector as well, into today's event. I just wanted to, I know it's 7 o'clock, I just want to kind of like end this kind of like panel on a bit of a call for action. So just one little question, I suppose, for everybody, on the note of Ita, with that kind of humanized approach, is that what's one small thing that we can all do as human beings in our day-to-day to kind of help, I suppose, change that narrative around violence against women and girls? What's one small thing which we can do? And I suppose goes out to everybody.
I would say, from my side, I would say just be aware as human beings that this happens. You know, to be able to support, to be an active bystander, but it's all that personal awareness. Domestic and sexual violence, you know, is a problem. It's not just, it doesn't only happen in TV, as well as it is portrayed, or, you know, as humanely as it can be portrayed. You know, we need to be aware that it's a lot of people that have gone through this, family members, friends. Let's just be aware.
Okay. Thank you, Pamela.
For me, part of the next, or the next area that I'm focusing on is consent in our secondary schools. And when we start inviting more of an open narrative around intimacy, relationships in our secondary schools, and bring parity again to our young boys as well as our young girls. I'm working with a lovely lady called Siobhan Higgins, who works on active consent and has developed the active consent program. And she was saying that so many of our young boys in secondary school feel they have to watch pornography because they feel they can't be in a place of not knowing how to behave. And we need to help encourage all of our young boys to know that it's okay not to know, and that we again bring parity in how we educate our young people, both men, you know, or across the spectrum, men, bisexual, gay, you know, lesbian, whatever it is, about you know, about honesty, and and we try and bring an education around our intimate expression, our intimate lives, that is just more normalized, you know, so that our young people don't have to turn to pornography. And that's a big job that I think then will help to bring more health in our intimate expression and our relationships throughout our society.
Thank you. Lorien, what's something which you think that we can, I don't know if you're on mute, Lorien.
Oh, no. It's a perceptual thing. I think it was something that one of the charities said to me around the Punch production, that it's not about what governments can do to make women feel safe. It's not about what women can do to make themselves feel safe. It's not about, you know, a helpline or a rape alarm, or it's about understanding it's about male violence, essentially. And I think it's about, if we can try and understand what that is and how to address that, that's the problem. not how to make women feel safe in the world that we live in. And for me, that distinction was quite radical. I hadn't really thought about it like that. Yeah. So I would just clarify that in people's minds. That would be my point.
Thank you. And Valence and Andor, is there anything that either of you two wanted to say as the kind of an action of what day to day anyone can do?
I don't know. I think we believe that films can change attitude and can gain main recognition in the viewer and change preconceptions. I believe in this.
Yeah, and as authors and filmmakers and storytellers, we have the responsibility to talk these subjects, to talk about these subjects, to put the audience in different position, to force them to try to reconsider their preconceptions, which are really often that we are struggling with preconceptions, and we can't really deal properly with these kind of subjects in these kind of situations. So we really believe that art can help a lot, of course, communication can help a lot, of course, and to tell the stories, not just by movies, of course, but to tell the stories. Even if you are a victim, if you are a survivor, or if you are a filmmaker, you have the responsibility to open up windows and doors on the subject too.
And I think we filmmakers need to tell stories and speak about this topic in different ways. I think it's very important, several ways. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and I completely agree. And is that film definitely can be a vehicle which we can have storytelling and create some change and definitely educate people on. And Ita, you kind of mentioned about kind of like the active consent and kind of that consent and that kind of bigger piece in secondary schools, and actually saw a review of it was I May Destroy You, that somebody said that they had more of an education through film watching I May Destroy You around sexual consent than they ever did in their secondary school, which I think is exceptionally powerful. I don't know if you read that.
No, I hadn't.
Yeah, I'll send you over that article. It's really, really powerful. But what a great message to end this panel on. Thank you so much for our amazing panelists for speaking with us today and for giving up a little bit of your evening. And thank you for everyone who who has attended as well with the audiences. Panelists, thank you for everything which you have created and everything which you are continuing to do and have done. I think we've definitely got a very long way to go before we end violence against women and girls, but we're going to get there a hell of a lot faster if we're working together. So big thank you for everyone for joining today. I hope it's inspired those audiences to become an ally or become an activist, or be more of an ally and more of an activist. And please do continue the conversations that we have started tonight in your place of work, in your friendship circles, in your communities, and of course on social media by using hashtag 16day16films. And you can tag in 16day16films and also UK Says No More, and hopefully continue a little bit of the conversation, throughout 16 days. And hopefully this has inspired you to raise some awareness for the remaining 16 days. I think we've got 10 days left, haven't we, Pamela? We've got 10 days left of 16 days of activism. So hopefully, let's raise some awareness and continue the conversations. But thank you all so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
thank you.
Thank you
very much. Take care.
Have a nice evening, everybody.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.